Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Nathan's 3D Factory. In this episode, I'm going to show you UV unwrapping. So UV unwrapping is a very basic skill that everyone needs to know if they're going into 3D design. So in this episode, what we got here is that we have this object that I've called box, and I'm going to show you why we need the UV unwrapping and what we do to get it. So UV unwrapping is very nice for the fact that UV textures are something that you can use to control how your faces show up, all your textures and everything, and then it can also transfer between 3D programs. So on here I'm in my edit mode and I'm going to go to edge selection mode by pressing 2 on my keyboard here. So first I'm going to take this edge, and I'm going to take this edge, these two here, and these two right here. And then I'm going to say Control E, and we are going to mark seam. So now, if I go into my UV editing, then I can select all those faces by pressing A. I'm going to say U to unwrap this. So right off the bat, we get this layout right here. So one analogy I like to use when I'm doing the UV editing and explaining that to people is take like a cereal box, like your standard cereal box, and then you flatten out everything so that it goes onto this UV map. You can paint the textures on it, right? So now what I can say is that from this we can start painting our texture, but before we do that we have to give it a new texture. I'm going to call this one test, new image. There are a few more steps that I have to do before I start painting on here. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my shading, and then the material that's already on this object, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the base color, I want it to be that image texture. And I want to use the color output. And then I'm going to take that one that's called test, and then we're going to do, for the coordinate system, we're going to say texture coordinate UV. There we go. Now we'll go back into our layout right here. I could go to texture paint, and I probably should have done that, but I didn't. Okay, so here I got my top orthographic, front orthographic. So I want to make sure that I'm in my correct place here, right? So now I'm going to go to texture paint. Oh yeah, and I also want to put this onto rendered as I'm doing this. So I'm going to reduce the size of my brush here. And then I'm going to say, all right, well now I can say top is going to be right here. I'm going to go to front. And as I'm doing this, I'm watching what view I'm in over here. Okay, right. Back. Almost there. So at some point it starts to get a little laggy, you know? Okay. Left. bottom. Okay, now if I go back into my UV editing screen, now you'll see how these are oriented. So you notice that they're in a bunch of different directions. And because I did that, I press Z on here. Because these are oriented in the way that I had as I was doing the editing on the orthographic pictures there, and the orthographic views, I was able to get all these determined as to the orientation of where they need to go. So the top, it looks like it's upside down on this image, right? Bottom looks like it's right side up. But you know what? However it ends up coming up on those, you're going to be able to take your UV texture and you're going to be able to export it into another editor. So what you can do then is that you can take all these items here and you can export them. So what you do is you can say select all, and then you have this nice menu up here where you can say, all right, UV, we're going to export the UV layout. So then I'll show you really briefly where I've already exported this stuff. And I've also exported the image where you can say save a copy. So I'm going to go into an external editor here, and I use GIMP. And so to do GIMP, you can use GIMP, Photoshop, or Krita, or whatever you use for your image editing, right? So now I'll show you where I took the exported UV layout and also the texture that I created from it. So I'm going to open that project. So in this case, what I did was I had this image that I created. To do it, though, I ended up saying okay, so I ended up doing this where I had all this stuff. Turn off all these layers here. Okay. So on the reference layers, I had my box.png, which is the UV layer. So that ends up being just these transparent items right here. And then I also had the test.png. And so that's where I put all of my text orientations. Then I started adding all these other layers. And I can go over like how you can draw on top of these in another episode, but I want to give you the basic idea of what I did. So I had it so that my image right here was oriented the same way as how I had the top written, upside down. So same thing went for these. And so that's why I decided I need to keep track of all those so that I could have these. These end pieces didn't matter. I didn't do anything with those. So then what I did was that I exported a copy, and then I just did it to PNG is what I did. And now what I do is that I can take that texture that I made in GIMP, and I can import it. So I can say, all right, so this texture right here, I don't have to worry about it at this point. But when I go into my shading, I can say, all right, now I want to load an image. So I'm going to go and I'm going to find that image. Went into my UV mapping. And so I named this one UV tutorial.png. And now I've got my UV unwrapped object with all the textures, how they need to show up. All that from flattening out my object and then putting the textures on there. And I can actually show you right here. What it looks like on here. Okay, and then got it. So, simple way to show you how to do UV unwrapping, a very important process in 3D design, especially if you're going to be doing it for movies, video games, or whatever the case may be. This can also be applied to doing things for 3D printable stuff, like if you're going to be using a texture to control how your geometry goes, but that's something that we can do in another episode. So anyway, this is, again, how you do the UV process. And so I hope you have fun doing these kinds of things. I hope you're able to find some inspiration from this video. So make sure that if you haven't subscribed to my channel to do so. That way you can see more weekly updates that I get to everyone. And then like, comment, tell me how I'm doing, okay guys? Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.